navigate through COVID-19. We've made significant progress, and we are a safe destination for visitors. This has resulted in some measures of success in improving our economy, but we are not out of the woods yet. There is still a lot of work to do to improve our economy, get people back to work, and to ensure that all Bermudians enjoy a good quality of life. Today, I'm happy to provide an update on the work being done by the Ministry of Finance to support those that are being displaced from work and the measures that have and are being put in place to maintain business operations and employment in Bermuda and to stimulate our economy. Today, I will cover two areas. They are as follows: measures implemented by the government and our economic recovery. I will start with an update on measures implemented by the government. Since the onset of the pandemic, the Ministry of Finance has continuously stepped up efforts to provide support to deal with health emergency needs and assist individuals and businesses that were adversely impacted by the pandemic. As additional sectors of the economy have opened, we continue to assess and implement measures as part of our plan to bring further strength and stability to our economy in a fair and equitable manner that appropriately takes into account the needs of the people of Bermuda. The Ministry of Finance COVID-19 fiscal plan has already provided timely and targeted fiscal stimulus to various components of our economy as needed. Significant public resources have been directed to strengthening the healthcare sector and to support affected workers. We have quickly taken appropriate steps to ensure the availability of emergency financing to supplement reduced revenues and COVID-19 related expenditures. Actions taken in this regard include a number of items. For the government, we have raised $1.35 billion at historically low rates to help with funding of the government and its economic recovery over the next 2 to 3 years. To date, we have spent approximately $21 million for COVID-19 related health matters to keep Bermuda safe and secure. This included costs related to such items as PPE, testing and quarantining, and the cost to embody the regiment. The National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 was amended to allow for suspension of employee and employer contributions for a 12-month period commencing the 1st of July of 2020 and ending on the 30th of June 2021. And we've made amendments to the Contributory Pension Act of 1970 to allow for employees, employers, and self-employed persons to suspend payment of their social insurance contributions for the whole of the suspension period, which runs from July the 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. We've also taken some measures to assist individuals. These will include quickly introducing a 12-week initially unemployment benefit to assist persons who lost their jobs due to restrictions imposed as a result of the pandemic. To further assist those that were not yet employed, the government extended the unemployment benefit program for an additional 6 weeks. We have paid benefits to over 10,000 persons for a total cost to date of approximately $56.8 million. We provided a supplemental unemployment benefit to unemployed persons. To date, 57 persons have been paid for $77,000. We've amended the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 to permit a person under the age of 65 years old who participates in a private defined contribution plan or local retirement product to voluntarily withdraw up to $12,000. To date, we have approved over 14,000 applications for a total value of approximately $97.2 million. Additionally, further amendments to the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 were made to permit a person who had reached the normal age of 65 to withdraw up to 25% of their pension account balances. To date, 245 applications have been received, and applications totaling $8.4 million have been approved. The total value of assets under the National Pension Scheme, just by way of information, is estimated to be approximately $4.2 billion. So the amounts withdrawn represent approximately 2.5%. The government has also issued a number of measures in support of businesses. The government has implemented further emergency relief measures to assist businesses that have a pressing need for financial relief as a result of this pandemic. Some of the actions taken are as follows. The filing deadline for payroll and corporate services tax was extended. Penalties and fees that would normally apply for that period were waived. For local companies and permit companies, the deadline for filings and fees in relation to corporate reporting and taxes was extended by 3 months to the 30th of June of 2020. We provided relief from payroll tax to assist the restaurant and bar sector since the quarter ending the 30th of June 2020. This concession will be reviewed for possible extension at the end of each quarter. We provided payroll tax relief for taxi owners for the current fiscal year, and commencing October the 1st of 2020, we have now provided full payroll tax relief for the hotel sector. This concession will be reviewed for possible extension at the end of each quarter. The customs tariff was amended during the budget session to provide duty relief for businesses bringing in personal protective equipment and supplies. We've allowed retailers and other commercial importers to apply for duty deferment for up to 6 months on imported business goods, subject to a minimal surcharge. With respect to direct financial support to small and medium-sized enterprises, the Bermuda government, through the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, developed the Business Sustainability and Continuing Funding Program in response to the impact of COVID-19 on Bermuda's SMEs. At this time, government has provided the BEDC with $8 million of the $12 million of an approved grant. The BEDC have directly assisted 114 businesses with funding since the program began and are actively processing more applications. The implementation of the above-mentioned economic stimulus measures are expected to stabilize employment and hasten the economic recovery. Without these stimulus measures, the overall economic contraction in 2020 would have been worse. In addition, with immediate effect, to assist persons made redundant, commencing in this month, we will be providing payroll tax relief on redundancy payments to the employee portion only. In further support of the hotel sector, on a case-by-case basis, we will be providing a 50% discount on land tax for hotels for the next 2 land tax periods. Finally, I can confirm that in an effort to assist the retail sector and maintain employment levels in this sector, the Ministry of Finance is currently considering various customs duty and payroll tax concessions proposals put forth by the sector. The economic fallout caused by the COVID-19 pandemic is forcing governments around the world to come up with policies for stimulating their economies. Many are considering tested and proven methods to boost their economies in the short term and to provide wide societal and economic benefits in the long term. I'm referring to infrastructure investments. Bermuda is no different, and at my last press conference, I advised that some of the funding from our recent debt raise will be used to bring forward some aspects of the government's long-term capital plan. These capital projects will support our economic recovery, provide employment for Bermudians while improving our quality of life. To this end, the government's Capital Expenditure Plan Technical Committee has been meeting to expedite public sector capital investments focusing on construction projects. In total, for fiscal 2020-2021, the ministry is providing up to $90 million in capital development funding. This government's economic plan has always been rooted in growing the twin pillars that have served the Bermuda economy well: financial services and tourism. Other areas of focus include diversifying Bermuda's economy in an effort to attract companies in growing industries, implementing measures to reduce the cost of living and doing business in Bermuda, making the government more efficient, and reducing regulation and bureaucracy to stimulate investment while promoting competition in the Bermuda economy. I am confident that continuing with these principles will ensure that our economy recovers and grows. It is important that the scope of our economic recovery plan be broad-based, covering both measures to sustain economic activity and structural reforms. Policy measures will target our most critical and prospective economic sectors and will involve the following: supporting the recovery of tourism and business travel, supporting and expanding international business, and encouraging business development and economic diversification. Bermuda's emerging tech sector and advanced financial regulatory framework will be capitalized on as an opportunity. The adverse impact and sudden joblessness across the tourism industry as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the Bermuda Tourism Authority believes Bermuda will accelerate its road to recovery in the tourism space, given how we have successfully managed the health risk brought on by the pandemic. While Bermuda's tourism industry has suffered, like other jurisdictions that rely heavily on tourism and travel, we have been able to distinguish ourselves through our efforts to remain safe. A major part of Bermuda's tourism recovery marketing plan will rely on this reputation, and we believe it will aid in our recovery strategy because health and safety have never been more important to travelers than now. Other aspects of the BTA's tourism recovery plan include on July the 1st of 2020, the BTA restarted its paid marketing placements after stopping such marketing on March the 16th. In the meantime, the BTA is working through an inside-out marketing strategy that aspires to stimulate spending from local residents to supplement the low and gradual return of leisure visitors. This includes a new digital nomad policy that will attract professionals and students to the island to work from Bermuda remotely. Special promotions for the restaurant, golf, and retail industries have already unfolded. The yacht and catamaran boat charter industry will be the strategy focus starting this weekend. The latest Inside Out campaign runs parallel with marquee sports tourism events on the calendar this month, including the Bermuda Gold Cup, the Rugby 10 Series, and the Bermuda Championship, all slated to begin next week. The professional golf event will be the PGA's Tour's first tournament with live spectators since the onset of the pandemic. Each of those events are built on the premise that they are multi-year and part of the long-term sustainable growth for the industry. Additionally, the BTA plans to continue next year with the final year of its 3-year deal as a destination partner for the U.S. Open Tennis Championship in New York. The Super Yachts and Other Vessels Miscellaneous Act of 2019 should attract more visitors during the spring and fall seasons as super yachts transition between the Caribbean and Europe. Earlier this month, the BTA held a direct sales webinar to raise awareness with super yacht brokers to ensure they know Bermuda is open and safe and welcoming charters. Bermuda's strong position as a destination of choice for cruise ships will lead to the return of lost cruise travel business, safer than many other travel destinations in the region, given the measures taken by the government to effectively control the spread of COVID-19. With regards to diversifying the economy, the government, in conjunction with the Bermuda Business Development Agency, has developed a multifaceted approach to creating new areas of economic activity. Over the past year, progress has been made in establishing Bermuda as a domicile for technology companies in the emerging areas of financial technology, fintech, regulatory technology, regtech, and insurance technology, insurtech. The size of our relevant financial services sector and highly regulatory standards make us an attractive jurisdiction for technology companies to develop and test their products in our market before exporting those products to the rest of the world. In addition to looking to attract technology companies to Bermuda, the government's economic development and diversification strategy has been specifically focused on aviation and shipping, arbitration, biotech and life sciences, intellectual property, and satellite and space. Additionally, the Cabinet Office, in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance, the BDA, and the BMA, is crafting standalone family office legislation to differentiate Bermuda's offering in this competitive global space. Marketing efforts, policy, and legislative changes are also being advanced as part of a targeted Asia and Hong Kong strategy. It is anticipated that these actions would lead to more jobs in the financial services sector. The COVID-19 Economic Advisory Committee continues to play a fundamental role in our economic recovery. And as I indicated in my last remarks, the committee has already come up with several short-term ideas to assist persons and businesses in surviving through the early stages of the pandemic. To date, approximately 75% of the EAC's short-term items have been implemented. Some of the ideas suggested by the EAC that have been addressed since my last update on the 1st of September are as follows. We've extended payroll tax relief for the restaurant and bar sector. We provided full payroll tax relief for the hotel sector, and we provided land tax relief for the hotel sector. Another matter that was supported by the EAC was the government's approval of the sale of the Ascendant Group. This action will see an excess of $200 million flowing to Bermudian shareholders. The EAC will have their next meeting this Wednesday, and they're currently developing medium-term strategies that can be implemented over the next 1 to 3 years in order to stabilize and grow our economy. The strategies are being refined and assessed for impact before final submission to the government. The ministry will continue the process of integrating the various ideas proposed by the EAC and others into a comprehensive economic recovery plan that will lead to a sustainable path to economic recovery. I wish to once again assure the people of Bermuda that the government is sensitive to the challenges facing us from COVID-19, and with your support and cooperation, we will continue to take required steps to navigate our island through these difficult economic and financial conditions, with economic recovery being our key objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The global and local economic and social outlook remains daunting. The healthcare crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic has resulted in sharp declines in economic activity. The decline has triggered alarming levels of unemployment worldwide. While unemployment contractions in Bermuda's hospitality sector are most notable, it must be realized that redundancies are occurring across all industrial sections in a vast variety of occupational categories. Also, we are observing significant reductions in working hours and an increase in persons being made laid off. There is no question that the immediate future will be exceptionally difficult. We should anticipate further disruptions to our labor market during our long road to recovery. While the road ahead will be tough, the Bermuda public, confident in this government, elected us to lead, and we will provide the leadership needed to get us back on track. The ministry will also continue to provide social protection in the forms of financial assistance and the supplementary unemployment benefit, and allocate more resources to ensure that there is a smoother transition for persons to receive benefits while we execute our jobs and reemployment strategies. With that in mind, I can advise that to date, the total number of application packages collected from the Department of Financial Assistance by the public was 1,202. The total number of application packages returned to the Department of Financial Assistance submitted by the public was 338. Of the 338, the total number of persons approved for financial assistance was 76, or 23%. The total number of persons approved for the supplemental unemployment benefit was 73 persons, or 22%. The most frequent reason for processing delays include incomplete applications, refusal to provide financial household information, and applicants' assets far exceeding the eligibility requirements. If a member of the public requires additional assistance completing the application process, I encourage you to reach out to the Department of Financial Assistance so that an officer can assist you. We want to ensure that those persons in our community that need assistance receive it. The ministry is committed to moving forward with the Department of Workforce Development reemployment strategy to ensure Bermudians who are looking for work are trained, prepared, and put in contact with employers as more jobs become available. As a phased approach has been developed to get Bermudians back to work doing jobs that Bermudians can do. Our focus is to proceed with phase one of the reemployment strategy to prepare and help people find jobs. Phase one includes facilitating quality training and development opportunities for Bermudians to reskill, upskill, and become equipped to replace work permit holders in specific occupations, including landscaping, restaurants, and cleaning industries. We will also support training, especially for occupations within our hospitality industry, so that prospective employees are fully prepared for the opening of the next tourism season in April 2021 and the expected opening of St. Regis. The government has been actively involved with industry stakeholders to support the former workers of the Southampton Princess. The ministry has met with hospitality industry stakeholders, and I can confirm that occupational cross referencing has commenced and multiple career fairs are slated to take place in the near future. Over the coming weeks, the ministry will communicate the commencement of a moratorium on specific work permit categories to create additional capacity for Bermudian employment. I can also advise the public that the Labor Relations section has received several concerns regarding the process for layoff and redundancy, when redundancy is deemed to have taken place, and the parameters of the work recall. Employees have questioned being returned to work for short periods of time, working at reduced hours and pay, and whether there is a period of time in which employers are required to return them to their substantive position. In addition to guest workers being recalled back to work while Bermudians remain unemployed in like occupational categories. Unfortunately, the Employment Act is silent on these matters, and some employers are using this to their advantage as they are allowed to recall workers for a short period of time and restart layoff periods. This is a disadvantage to employees as they are unable to plan ahead or sustain themselves when their employment status and hours are uncertain. If alternative employment is sought by employees, it results in them forfeiting their right to severance pay. The Ministry of Labor will work to find a legislative solution to better protect employees and encourage employers to ensure that every effort is made to return laid off Bermudians back to the workforce in an equitable manner. I must make it clear that the onus is on the employer to make every effort to contact their employee to recall them to work, and these efforts should be documented. The employer should also advise of a reasonable time for the employee to return to work. If an employee refuses to return to work, they forfeit their right to severance pay and notice pay. If an employee does not return within the time frame specified without reasonable cause or notice, they forfeit the right to severance pay and notice pay. If an employer is facing financial constraints that may affect recall and hours of work, this should be communicated to the employee, and a time frame specified regarding the period. Alternative measures may be put in place. Due to the current financial constraints of some employers, Employees should consider reasonable recall packages that may include reduced hours. If employers or employees have any questions or concerns, they should contact the Labor Relations section on 297-7714 and 297-7716, or visit them on the fourth floor of the Dame Lewis Braun Evans Building, 58 Court Street, Hamilton. The initiative to allow persons to work and study from Bermuda continues to bear positive fruits. As of today, we have received 519 applications, and 406 one-year residential certificates have been issued. The government will continue to promote this initiative and welcome our guests to our shores. Thank you. At this time, I welcome any questions from the media.
Good afternoon, Minister, Finance Minister. How long will the unemployment benefits, not even the unemployment, the supplementary benefits, be? How long is this program going to be going on?
Trevor, I don't think that we have set out initially a period of time for the supplemental benefit. You'll recall the supplemental benefit was introduced after the
unemployment
benefit
ceased.
had run its course, and the economy was not yet back on its full legs. The objective behind supplemental benefit was to provide assistance to persons who have not yet gone back to work and who are in need of some assistance. We expect to have it running for a bit longer until the economy kind of regains its steam. Perhaps the Minister of Labor may have some insights that he could add, since his team is responsible for the administering of the program.
So the initial term ends March 31st, 2021. But we would have conversations prior to that expiring to determine how we'll proceed forward.
Will the government finances, how are you going to sustain these long periods of unemployment?
Trevor, when we went to the markets back in August, we attempted to forecast somewhat conservatively what we thought was going to happen with our finances. We expected a period of prolonged economic malaise. So we thought 2 to 3 years of funding and projecting some degree of deficit. And so there is sufficient funding for the time being for the provision of supplemental benefits to persons. But I will be starting the budgeting process for next year within the coming week. And we'll take a look at where we expect to come out for 2020, 2021. And then we need to make adjustments accordingly.
You named an economic advisory committee earlier this year. We haven't heard anything about this committee. Why hasn't we heard from this committee?
Or perhaps you haven't been at my prior news conferences, Trevor, because my recollection is that at every press conference that I give, I speak about the work that the Economic Advisory Committee is doing. Perhaps you haven't heard individually from the members, but that's why I'm here.
Okay, Minister Hayward, I attended and I'm not going to identify this facility, but I attended a popular brunch spot last Sunday, and I saw, I'll say, about 8 guest workers, one Bermudian, which was the hostess. And I'm sure we have Bermudians that can fill these positions. Is it contractual agreements that could be in place that could possibly stop these individuals from being employed there?
So there are a number of active work permits, and persons are working in the active work permit period. But what is more important is what we're planning to do from a ministry level, and that's transition individuals into jobs where we see a high percentage of work permits. the restaurant industry being one. So moving forward, you'll see a different strategy when it comes to approving permits of waiters and service.
My last question for the Minister of Finance. How much revenue has government lost as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic on cruise ship arrival fees, et cetera, et cetera?
I would need to come back to you with that, Trevor. I know that we have recently finished the quarter ended September 30th. And if you don't mind, we can come back to you with a comparison between what we had projected and where we ended up. You'll recall that in February of early this year, I produced a budget, which had our best case thinking around various revenue lines. The taxes that we received from cruise ships were among those lines. So we can check to see what the number was then. And we know where it is now is not particularly high because there have been no cruise ships. I'm just going to give you a sense of the variance in an absolute number. So we'll come back to you with that.
Thank you.
Afternoon, ministers, and thanks. Minister Haywood, I guess I'll start with yourself, and sorry if I missed it during your remarks. And you did mention the digital nomad policy.
Mhm.
In terms of actual numbers of folks that have come that are on the island now for that, do you have any recent figure on those numbers?
I don't have those with me today, but what we're going to do is an exercise to cross-reference the applications that have been granted and to track the physical presence of those individuals on island.
Right. Thank you, sir. You did allude to moratoriums on work permits. Can you give us anything, even loosely, in terms of some of the categories you might be contemplating?
But what we're going to do from a ministry standpoint is do an analysis of where the demand actually is from the employer side, and then do the cross-reference with the skill sets that many of the unemployed individuals possess. And then we'll make informed decision on which job categories we would actually move to implement moratoriums on work permits.
Right. And my last question for you, sir, was just in terms of unemployment. I know that's a moving target. Is there a recent figure in terms of the numbers of Bermudians who are out of work that we're looking at the moment?
Unfortunately, we don't have a proper estimate. What we're going to do is utilize labor market indicators to get a better measure as to how many persons are actively unemployed. And we want to put in place a more permanent solution so that we can track unemployment on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, sir. Minister Dickinson, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask. There was we heard a great deal of the National Digital Bank and its role in our economic recovery. Certainly, I've been getting a lot of questions as to how it will work. There's this kind of digital Bermuda dollar, but in terms of getting real cash behind it, is this an appropriate time to hear a bit more about how that would work?
I think that there's a bunch of work that needs to be done on fleshing out a business plan around how this idea would actually be deployed. And that work is about to commence.
Right. I suppose either of yourselves, in terms of the unemployment benefit, we had, I guess I could call it an honor system with people going back to work, that they would let the government know that they were back and the payments would stop. Knowing human nature as it is, I wonder, there may have been some degree of overpayment that went on. Will you be looking to recover that money, or is it better to leave that money where it is and still in its own way circulating in the economy? Can you address a bit of that?
So I can say that there were instances of overpayments. I would ask folks to recall that I think it was a Tuesday when the Premier announced at a press conference that people would be getting paid by Friday. I can also recall having said at a press conference when we were doing them, I think daily, that in order to get that done, I broke some rules. The reality is that government has financial instructions, and there's one person who can change them or vary them, and that's me. And so I changed the rules in order to accommodate getting people paid, because in my mind, it was the right thing to do to get people money in their pockets so they could feed themselves before we shut the island down, as opposed to obsessing about making sure that every I was dotted and every T was crossed. So there were some instances where we overpaid people, or people didn't self-report in a timely fashion. We are about to embark on an initiative due to us. I would say that in instances where we've reached out to employers, the employers have been very cooperative and the employees have been cooperative because we have the right to garnish people's salaries should we choose to do that. But we are trying to, as best we can, recover the money while causing as minimum disruption to people's everyday lives as possible. Now, that's a bit of a balancing act, but we are properly motivated to get the government's money back in those instances where we've made overpayments, because there are individuals, as evidenced by the supplemental unemployment benefit, that there are persons out there who are still in need of support. And inasmuch as we paid others who've gone back to work too much, we should recover those funds so we can apply them to those who have not gone back to work yet.
Got it. You mentioned medium-term proposals from the EAC. Is that something that we just have to wait for the EAC to let us know what they are, or can you tell us a bit about what those
the process is the EAC amongst themselves come up with ideas. The ideas are fleshed out. They're then shared with the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
We assess them, and then I share them with my cabinet colleagues who either endorse them or don't. And so we're still going through the process. And that's the process we followed with the short-term ones and the process that worked, that had broad buy-in, and we'll do it again with the medium-term ones as well.
Thanks, sir. Last one. I've seen some reports in the Gazette of the Robert Brockman tax fraud case. It's quite a big series of stories they've had there. We wanted to know if you just had any general views reputationally on the implications that such a large tax fraud story might have for us as a jurisdiction.
Well, Jonathan, I'm still being briefed on the matter. What I would say is this. When Bermuda was approached by the authorities for our cooperation with respect to this situation, we did as we always do. We cooperated. And I think you would have seen in the press last week a statement by the Bermuda Police Service on this matter and their involvement in this situation. What I will say is this. We are not a place where people can do illicit activity. And in as much as we identify it or others identify it for us, we will cooperate fully to stop that kind of behavior. In as much as there were local financial institutions that were involved in this matter, the BMA, the independent regulator, will be doing their own work to assess what things have been done inappropriately, and will take the appropriate actions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, ministers. Thank you, members of the media. That concludes our press conference for today. Thank you.